diving Mike McKenzie.
Unleashing a hammer. And a beautiful throw. And a massive layout. Good run. Layout, and what a catch. Babbitt with the layout score.
And Harris with the deep shot to Wu, who's going to run that down. Oh! And great hit by Darren Wu.
On the final Sunday of the AUDL regular season, first place in the East is still up for grabs. The Toronto Rush at 10-3 need a win against the 6-7 New York Empire to seize first place in the East. A week from now, the postseason in the league will be underway. Raleigh's the top seed in the South. San Francisco clinched it out west. Madison, the top seed in the Midwest, but the bottom right of your screen could evolve with DC knocking on the door of the top spot. Toronto and New York coming up. And with that, we welcome you into our broadcast booth. Brian Jones won a gold medal in France not too long ago. I'm Evan Lepler. It's great to have you with us, and it's a huge day in the world of Ultimate. We'll talk about what happened in Poland for USA and Canada shortly. But first things first, huge game for the Rush today.
Yeah, you would think that maybe the Rush would be looking ahead to the playoff picture, looking at who they could play in Madison, Raleigh down the road. We talked to the head coach, Sachin Raina, before the game, and he said, we're focused on today. We're not worrying about anything else. It's about, you could look at those teams and pick your poison later on, but today it's about winning and locking up that first seed.
Well, they stare across the field and see the New York Empire, a team that has obviously had a disappointing year relative to expectations, but still a scary group of talent, starting with Jeff Babbitt, who's setting all sorts of statistical records with his performance this year.
Yeah, it really starts and ends with Jeff Babbitt when you talk about the Empire. His athleticism is just unparalleled. He's the type of guy when you can look at, he doesn't look like he gets up to full speed, but then all of a sudden he's zooming past every other defender or the receiver to get the layout block. He's been an incredible addition to this Empire squad, and it's been a dominant force on the field this season.
He's played every single game through the year, and that's a glimpse of the makeup speed. Got his 40th block of the year yesterday. He's got an incredible highlight reel for the 2017 season. The Toronto Rush will try to contain Babbitt today, and one of the guys doing so will be Isaiah Masik-Kelly. Babbitt has moved over to the O-line. Masik-Kelly, Brian, has shifted to defense, and he's done a really nice job piloting that D-line off a turnover.
This is an opportunity that a lot of players relish after they start out. They're very talented. They start in the O-line, and that's Isaiah's role has been that way for years. And this year, after kind of a lackluster start, he's become that pillar on the turnover on the defensive side, been able to guide them down and putting in the score, whether it's laying out or being the quarterback of that defense.
Well, obviously the Rush are without Andrew Carroll, Jeff Powell, and Mark Lloyd, but head coach Sachin Raina still feeling confident trying to beat the Empire again. The Rush have never lost to New York. They try to keep the streak alive next.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate Frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that when it comes to cancer can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a Frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
The Toronto Rush in first place as we usually see them late in the season. They've won 9 of their last 10 games after starting the season with 2 losses in their first 3. And when this game was initially put on the schedule back in the preseason, New York, Toronto, final Sunday of the season, we thought this could be a game for first place. Obviously, one team has lived up to expectations, and Brian, the New York Empire, have not. Still trying to play for pride today and to close out the season with a win. They've played with purpose yesterday against Ottawa. But one of the big stories of this season has been the subpar performance of the Empire. As you've watched them, what has stood out?
Well, it shows you that even with a tremendous amount of talent, sometimes teams just can't put together. And they've had some new additions in Harper Garvey and Ben Yott that have really helped, and some exciting players. And Sean Keegan's taken on a big load this season. But it's difficult to put together, and it comes down to chemistry. It comes down to being smart on the field. It's not just all about athleticism. It's not all about big names. It's about cohesiveness and moving forward as a team, and that's really tough no matter who you are.
Well, both these teams have had some disjointed rosters throughout the season, in part because of the World Games, which have wrapped up from Wrocław, Poland. The USA clinching gold earlier today with a 13-7 win over Colombia in the gold medal game, avenging a loss to Colombia earlier in the tournament. And New York Empire standout Chris Kocher had perhaps the play of the game, a sensational full extension horizontal bid to give the USA a score en route to the win. And Team Canada clinching bronze with a win over Australia earlier today. The Rush will be missing 3 members of their team who were on the Canadian squad in Poland: Jeff Powell, Andrew Carroll, and Mark Lloyd. And all 3 of those guys were anchors to what the Canadian team did. I'm sure you spent a lot of time, some strange hours the past couple of days like I did watching the action from Poland. Your final takeaways from the 2017 World Games?
Well, first of all, I have to not thank the World Games team from Team USA taking away Chris Kocher from the beach team, which I got to coach. He was sorely missed in a lot of ways, but you can just tell once you see Chris after a while, he's got tremendous speed. He can guard almost anybody, and it's great to see that realized for him. On the other side, if you're the Rush, you're just breathing a sigh of relief that it appears like no major injuries happened for Powell and Lloyd or Carroll, and especially with Andrew Carroll, that guy has wheels, and he's incredibly fast. He's tough to coach against, and he's fun to watch.
Well, I said all along that once you lost Chris Kocher from the Beach Worlds team, it was impossible for you to win gold, and it just speaks to your brilliance and intelligence from a coaching perspective that you still were able to get that ragtag group into the gold medal game and let alone win it.
I wouldn't call us ragtag, but it was fun getting some of those new additions in there as a result, and we found some new guys in Walden Nelson, and so that was a great experience. But today, when we're looking at this game, New York still hasn't come away with a win against Toronto, and as a former Rochester Dragons coach, you can hang your hat on a season with just one of those wins. It's something that you can almost put up on a mantle, and for New York, there's a lot to win today. You go out and win this game, you prove you can do it, you can get over that mental hurdle, and it can mean a lot for next coming season. For Toronto, they've got to put this game away, come out strong, regardless of whether or not they come out and they win the game. Even if they lost a close one, they've got to feel like they're playing well going into the playoffs. You, as a coach, as a team, you don't want to have a letdown going in and just kind of limping into the playoffs and resting on your laurels. You want to be playing at the highest level you possibly can.
Well, the Rush began the season with a win at New York. It was on the second day of a back-to-back for the Rush, and it was a tie game, 17-all in the fourth quarter. Then the Rush scored 5 straight goals to win it 22-17. And, Brian, you just wonder, if the 2 seasons might have gone differently. I mean, the old Robert Frost poem, two roads diverged. The Empire took the one they've more traveled by. I mean, they have routinely been close against the best teams and fallen short down the stretch. The opening game of the season, can you even contemplate if New York wins that game, how their season might be different today?
Well, it's going to have such a different feel, and they had 2 coaches resign in the middle of the season. And with 1 win over Toronto, you're going to have hope, especially if you're still in the playoff hunt, which they were at that point in time. Things are going to be looking good. A lot of players are going to be buying in with confidence, and confidence is something you can't just trick into place. It's based on the preparation. It's based somewhat on results, and when you can prove you can do something, like getting a win against Toronto, that would have meant a lot for the start of that season. It's tough to say completely that would have meant, oh, now New York's going to be at the top of the division with just that 1 game difference. But it would have been a different outlook, and it might have made things go a different way.
New York will begin on offense. Jeff Babbitt moved to the O-line last week after the Empire had what their coach C.J. Ouellette said was the worst quarter in franchise history. They fell behind 7-1 after 12 minutes against Philadelphia. We're down 8-1 before getting back on the scoreboard. Things started to stabilize when Babbitt in the 87 shirt moved over to the offense. Sean Keegan to Babbitt's right, certainly one of the anchors of the New York handling set. And for the Toronto Rush, Jarrett Marin ready to pull out there leading this Toronto Rush D-line. 168 total games in the AUDL regular season. This is number 167, and it's underway. The final meaningful game of the year, San Francisco and Vancouver, coming up later from the West Coast, and an early whistle will halt the action. The Empire in the white, the Rush in the black.
Right off the bat, Keegan is ready to go, and this is a guy who's an incredible shooter. He's been someone who came up through the leagues, proving himself as a cutter in the past, and this year he dealt with some knee injuries. He's actually got some knee surgeries planned for the next season. Right now he's okay and not 100%. But he's got great skill with the disc.
Taylor Brooks, the first cut for the Empire, number 7, playing what likely is his final game as a member of the Empire. He's been a stalwart the past several years, but moving away from New York after the season, back to his home state of Virginia, as Mike Drost makes a great leaping catch just shy of the end zone. New York got off to a good start yesterday in Ottawa. They led 3-0 before the Outlaws got on the board, and a good start for the Empire here today.
It was a good start, and you see someone like Mike Drost, who made his living early on in the AUDL as being a defensive block getter.
As Mike Drost makes a great leaping catch just shy of the end zone.
Mike's done a great job of transitioning from the defensive side to the offensive side, become a great cutter who can see the space, move really well. He's not someone who's going to necessarily beat you with his disc skills, but he's done a great job of just seeing the downfield space and attacking.
So New York's D-line will step on the field. The big story from yesterday's game was the performance of Ben Yacht, who went plus 14 for the day with 3 goals, 6 assists, and 5 Ds. The former college champ at the University of Minnesota, jogging down the field, and Yacht's going to match up with one of the Toronto handlers initially as Cam Harris downfield the first throw. Harris being chased by Matt Weiner. Thompson McKnight, the longtime quarterback for Toronto. Not a guy who piles up the stats, but very steady as an O-line anchor.
Well, he built a reputation of being able to huck it early on in his career, and ever since then, when teams game plan, they've kind of, that reputation has carried on, and every once in a while, teams challenge, and sometimes you'll see McKnight in the second half just start getting some easy goals.
Harris sneaks it through. Not a ton of space, but Darren Wu with his first score of the day, the former Vancouver Riptide star, now on Toronto 1-0.
Cam Harris is just so difficult to guard. He's somebody with that length and speed that can get open. And then on top of that, once he gets the disc, how do you mark him? You can see his wingspan is evident here. Wu makes it a little easy, making that comeback cut to the cone. But Harris is known for that. Those long flick hucks that just stay up in the air, right, leading the receiver. There's been a lot of times when you talk to a lot of Toronto players, they think that Cam Harris is the most talented guy on their squad.
Yeah, they're glad that people don't talk about him as much as some other guys because they think he feasts on not just the motivation from not being promoted like everybody else, but the fact that the other team doesn't necessarily assign the best matchup to Cam. Harper Garvey, an AUDL rookie, has had an interesting year. He's certainly authored plenty of highlights. He's also turned it over a bunch, which has netted him a negative plus-minus for the season, despite all of his positive plays. Keegan looking long, Massac Kelly poached off, and Massac Kelly swats the disc away.
You see New York trying to isolate one cutter at a time, and that can be effective when your cutters just automatically get open and are so threatening, but it also allows Toronto to poach off, and you see Massac Kelly make a great play, great read. He's there in the deep space, and since there's not a lot of cutters coming in for New York, they're only looking at one option at a time.
Massac Kelly looking deep. Jonathan Edwards quickly gives it up. Jackie Howe. Jones swings it. Massac Kelly, the D and the dime. The Rush with an early break to take a 2-1 lead as Edwards hauls in the score.
Great movement after the turnover. Massac Kelly got the block to start with, and afterwards, it's so tough to mark these throwers that know where all the weak spots are. This is the most dangerous spot in the field near the end zone. You have the choice of trying to take away the little inside, or you have the choice of taking away the outside. Dross trying to make the play over Massac Kelly. That's not going to work out too often. And after that, just a quick little around. That's a throw for someone younger who's not used to making that. A lot of times it looks like that space isn't open, but you have to kind of trust the fact that the receiver's going onto it. You know from your offensive reps that's what they're doing, that's where the receiver's going, and so you can put it out to space and know it's most likely going to be completed.
The lefty Jarrett Marin launches another pull, playing in his 13th game of the year for the Rush. Empire centers to Garvey, young man out of Knox College, grew up in the Minnesota youth scene in the Twin Cities.
Not a lot of movement downfield here from New York. It's a lot of handler movement. And then a little bit of confusion. Looks like Cutter's sometimes looking around, waiting to cut.
Here comes Babbitt. He'll get the under. Massac Kelly on the mark. Babbitt shows the flick. Matt Stevens runs out of room on the sideline.
The cut was there. Babbitt just unable to keep it inbounds. Going to be tough. They're going slightly against the wind. Could be a crosswind.
It's an overcast day here in Toronto. Chance of some showers. That bold attempt won't work. Jeremy Norden throws it away, intended for Jason Huynh. Nice defense from New York's Connor Klein. Now, one little subplot to the final day of the season is always the stat watch for both the team lead and the league lead. And Jeff Babbitt entered the day with a plus 90 for the season. Indianapolis's Rick Gross also entered the day plus 90. Now, Indy's playing in Madison right now. They started an hour before this game. You know, right now Babbitt's at plus 89 because of the turnover, dropped him into second place. But as the day progresses, we'll be following that. Of course, Misha Freistadter for Jacksonville set the AUDL record last year, plus 125. And obviously those numbers don't always create success because Jacksonville's had a much better year using Freistadter differently in 2017. Indianapolis and New York both could finish the season below 500. And there's Babbitt back to plus 90 with his first goal of the day.
Connor Klein, former college teammate, getting the job done, making sure that Babbitt's still in the running for that. league leading, and I bet the players know this. I bet the players know this coming into the game, where they're standing, and a lot of times here, when you're out of the playoffs, you're looking for something to hang your hat on. Beautiful throw. Klein's able to put it up there, and then you have Babbitt, so that's kind of, you see how relaxed that catch was. For a lot of other people, that might be a little bit of a panic, and Toronto might be chomping at the bit to get the block, but not in the case there.
Brian, what was your reaction last week when you heard that Jacksonville's Jordan Huston scored 22 goals in a single game for the Cannons?
That's unbelievable. I didn't believe it. I legitimately didn't believe it. I was like, no, this is a typo, right? This has got to be like 12 goals. 22?
He's now at 80 for the year, leading the league in goals. He's 4th in the league in plus minus, heading into the final Sunday of the season.
That's just something to watch. I especially like the one where
Harris shooting it for Burrell, and Ben Burrell has the quick strike for the Rush. 3-2 Toronto, 6:45 to go in the first.
You can see why Harris is so tough to guard, because a lot of times he's going to start downfield, and here, once he gets the disc in the backfield as a defender, you might be able to relax for a moment on a lesser player, but not in Cam Harris. He's got the length, and this is something too, is the teammates know it's coming. This is a set play. Harris is just able to put it up. Here, the upwind is a little bit of an advantage, because you can just throw that disc as hard as you want, and as long as it stays in the air, the receiver's going to be able to run it down. The wind does a little bit of the work hanging that disc.
Well, heading into the last game of the season, you always wonder what the players have talked about. Obviously, Toronto knows they need a win to be the #1 seed, which is certainly important. The Rush have 2 of their 3 losses this year being in D.C., and they beat D.C. at home, and they can avoid a potential trip to D.C. with a win here today. Big left-handed backhand from Matt Auletta, hanging up in the air and knocked away. Masick Kelly with his second D of the quarter.
Well, I think us saying that he had a little bit of a lackluster start to the season maybe got to him, because that's his second D, as you said, and same type of play. New York right now just throwing it up into the deep poaches.
Breton Tan. Back to Mario Zlatic. Jason Huynh drops the hammer. Back of the end zone. Masick Kelly can't make the catch. Ambitious throw there from Huynh. And an opportunity for the Empire. You know, last week, the mindset for Jacksonville's offense was that they wanted to get Jordan Huston goals. He began the day 8 goals shy of the league lead. So they were thinking maybe we can get him to 8. He had scored 11 in a game once earlier this year. The record was 14. He had 10 at halftime, and then he had 19 at the end of the third quarter. And they just kept on feeding him.
My favorite one of the highlight reel was the one where his teammate towed the line to be not in the end zone so he could throw him the goal.
There's a run through D from Toronto's Jeremy Norden. So Norden back even. He had the turnover earlier. Now gets the D. And now he's +1 for the day. Norden to Huynh. Jeremy Norden has been a pretty important addition to this Toronto team. Not the flashiest guy on the field, but kind of like his brother Justin. Just makes plays, gets the job done, a reliable presence out there.
You talked a little bit as we're watching Toronto go through and put in this goal. We talked at the beginning, what happened with the Empire this season? And when you watch this game, keep an eye on the downfield cutters, because right now, New York is having a tough time of getting any flow. It's a lot of handler movement, a lot of resets. The cutters have the ability to get open, but they're not moving. They're not moving as a unit. They're not moving as a team. And so eventually you'll see someone get open deep or someone get open under. But because it's the only cut being made, Toronto can just key in on that. Masick Kelly is just playing a deep, almost in a man defense, which you don't want to have happen. New York here going with a spread look, which I think is going to be really beneficial to what they need to do.
Garvey combats with a double team, gets rid of it.
Toronto tried to use that double team. They're just trying to get New York into different positions, change things up, especially because you start to see some new players out in the field. It's been a couple breaks in a row.
Well, this comeback in bounds doesn't look like it's going to return. Well, a guy like Harper Garvey, he was playing D3, led D3 Nationals in assists for Knox College in 2016. But the jump from D3 to the AUDL is massive, not just from a skill standpoint and a physicality standpoint, but even just from a rules standpoint. I mean, he wasn't facing any double teams like what he just faced in college here in the AUDL.
Yeah, for someone new, though, he has the skills. He has the big hammers, the big throws to get out of those double teams. And early in the season, we saw it be very useful.
Stall was called against Toronto. Garvey pumps his fist, happy to get the disc back. It's an important point here for New York. The Rush already have 2 breaks here in the first quarter. Great pressure. Mike McKenzie may not have deflected the disc, but certainly did the work. Jay Boychuk centers to Jackie Howe. And the Rush with an unforced error. From midfield. Great adjustment by Klein. And he's shaken up. Connor Klein did not play college ultimate this year. He had the eligibility, but chose to focus on the professional scene. Signing up with the Empire with his former college teammate Jeff Babbitt. Klein averaging about 4 goals per game. Through his first 10 games of the year, he had 42.
It's never a good sign when you see someone come down and it looks like a rather benign kind of just jump. Hopefully he's okay. He's quite the speedster. He's so difficult to guard even when you know that you need to shut him down and maybe just say take away the deep space. It's really hard to do on Connor Klein.
He had 6 goals in the 4-point win for the Empire yesterday in Ottawa. Keegan gets the reset for Garvey. Sam Taylor with a rising stall count gets the reset. And Garvey finds Keegan. The Empire hold Garvey's 28th assist of the season. As you've watched Garvey, what are the things that he can still improve as a young player?
I think for him, he's got a lot of room for general improvement anytime you come from a D3 system. But when you're looking at a player like that, it's going to be really nuanced and it's going to be relative to whatever system the team is running. Harper comes in with a great array of throws, whether it's be a flick, backhand, huck. He has the ability to run an offense, and I think that's something that he's going to get used to as his career goes on, is to be that quarterback is just more than just having the throws. And when you talk about the idea of having a field general, those types of players, it's because they're experienced and they have the intelligence to work through the systems and make the right decisions.
Sounds like you're saying it's much more mental than it is physical, especially for a guy going from D3 to the pro level. Decision-making is as big a thing as any.
Yeah, and decision-making is going to be about your offense. So if they're asking him to make those big throws.
This would qualify as a big throw and a good catch. Darren Wu through the contact, but this may come back. It is a travel back on the throw, and Harris will have to retreat 10 yards and wonder what he did. Majestic shot hung up there for a long time.
Usually Harris doesn't have to do too much work to get around a mark, but when you've got Ben Yacht on you, it makes things a little bit more difficult. So maybe he went for that extra reach.
And the next throw's a turnover. Quick shot to the end zone, and Harris makes amends. How about that sequence?
It's one of those things when sometimes you have opponents that start to play to the other team's style and rhythm, and after a rash of turnovers, we see both teams trying to put up the big shots and trying to make the quick play. Yacht was open in the end zone. Kofor just unable to hit.
Yearwood connects with Armstrong. Connor Armstrong's had a fine rookie season in the AUDL. He was the 2016 Ultimate Canada Male Athlete of the Year after captaining the Canadian Juniors team that won a silver medal in Poland at the Junior Championships in 2016.
A little bit of frustration on the field, just some general sloppiness here, and we're kind of coming away here with 50 seconds in the first quarter, and New York could be tied after their offense just hasn't looked that great in terms of flow. They're going to have an opportunity to punch it in.
Another dangerous shot, but it floats over the defender and into the grasp. That's New York's Matt Weiner for the score to tie it up 4-all.
Clark Kofor summoning the wind god for a little bit of puff right there to get it to hop over. This is one of those things where, as a thrower, you kind of hope for, you have little control over it, just enough float.
Darren Wu is like, what did I do to deserve this? He thought he had a goal at one end. Looked like he may have had a D at the other end. He comes up empty in both. And an important response from this Empire team, 41 seconds. The stadium scoreboard is having an issue here. So there's a video board that has our broadcast on it, but the graphic with the time is very small. So presumably they will announce the amount of time left in the stands for the players to be aware.
New York starting there with a 10-yard advantage on the pole, and they kind of don't use it as a result of it going out of bounds. That's something as a coach that drives you nuts. It's one of those things where I don't think that teams spend enough time on the little things of just getting poles in bounds. And it's going to start with something outside of a game, whether you have punishment for it or you have a player who's just very good and responsible. If you look at Toronto, Jarrett Marin is an incredibly great poler, and he makes a huge difference on the field.
Tan's shot was knocked down by a couple different members of the Empire. Not sure whether they'll give the D to Price or Drost. But now New York, with 20 seconds to go, looking to retake the lead. Trying to get this thing back on serve. A whistle and a timeout called by New York.
In this situation, a timeout is a tough call, and there's kind of two sides. It's a trade-off here. With 10 seconds to go, you want your best offensive line out in the field, and maybe you're looking to put some taller players on to get that deep shot. But at the same time, if you're Toronto, it's going to give you an opportunity to set up in a zone or any other specialized defense in these situations. And as we're now into the fifth, sixth season here with Toronto on the field, they're going to have a strategy for these situations. You're putting them into their kind of wheelhouse and what they want to do. And that's, I think you see that a lot of times in the NBA with the same type of timeout strategy is, do you take the timeout right before your last shot and allow the defense to set up? I think you kind of have to trust your offense a lot of times to move the ball and get it in.
So I've had this argument broadcasting basketball games with several different people. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Ultimate. Is a timeout more valuable to set up the offense or more valuable to set up the defense?
I think it's about knowing your team. If you're the Empire coach, if you're CJ Ouellette, and you see this team not really working it down the field and there's not good positioning, calling the timeout's a good strategy. Sometimes you can see that the defense is set and that it's going to be more important to get everybody on the same page. Sometimes you're going to see the offense out of whack, and you're just going to go ahead and try to reset.
Garvey has Wodach as a reset. Wodach goes up line for the Scuba. 12 seconds to go in the quarter. Wodach cross field. That'll float all the way to the end zone until it's caught. Was he in? Connor Klein And they were going to rule it a goal. Connor Klein caught the deflection. One ref said he was in, another said he was out. It was incredibly close.
I like the aggressiveness here by Wodach. Look at him read the double team. Harper's got this throw, very comfortable. And after that, he takes the shot early. He doesn't wait. He sees an opening he likes. Defender makes a great play. Knee is in first. That's a goal.
Yeah, that should absolutely be a goal. Connor Klein, shaken up earlier in the quarter, returns to make the catch of the quarter. And New York takes a 5-4 lead with just a couple seconds to go in the quarter. And it's certainly a good deal of confusion on the field here, I think in part because of the officiating crew's lack of communication and in part because of the lack of the in-stadium scoreboard. But they will put 3 seconds on the clock.
I would have never thought at the beginning of this quarter and how we saw things going that New York could go in with a 5-4 lead. Toronto's really squandered their chances while New York has put away these couple breaks to get up on top. This is, regardless of the score, if you're in a situation, it matters way more, I think, for Toronto that they're playing, that they be playing well. And they got some great defensive looks early, but their offense on a turn has not been clicking. And these mistakes as well has hurt them.
New York has Babbitt and Yacht hanging out deep, along with Ross Ward, who's got some size. Ryan Drost and Clark Kofer will double team Thompson McKnight. McKnight gets it off. This is a shot deep, and it'll pad Jeff Babbitt's stats. So Babbitt with his 41st D of the season. Several of them have been last-second scenarios. Others have been spectacular. And the New York Empire, after trailing 4-2, closed the first on a 3-0 run. Toronto will receive to start the second, but it's the Empire with a 1-score lead after 12 minutes in Toronto.
Hi, I'm Joel Larakis, and I'm the operations manager of Boone Technical Clothing here in the United States. I lost my mom last 2014 to breast cancer. She was 54 years old. It was pretty tough for me because I wasn't able to help her or have the kind of knowledge to be able to do something about the situation. I learned about Eric, about Jim's vision, about his organization, and I want to be part of it, not only as an ultimate player, but also a son to my mom. I think one thing that early recognition is critical helped me was to be able to reach out to other people who are still having the chance or privilege to do something about the cancer within their family or like friends. I think that's what Eric is all about. It's just not within the sport. It goes on and off the field. If you volunteer, even though it's only you can be able to inspire and aspire other people to help the movement. And you never know. People are just waiting to be reached out to, and they're only waiting for you.
(5-4) New York over Toronto. Second quarter about to begin. New York Empire, of course, had a coaching change earlier this year. Tom Gibbons resigning after being the coach for several years of the Empire. And C.J. Ouellette, who was the defensive assistant, basically running the D-line, took over. And Ouellette, certainly this is a team that's had its up and downs throughout the season. It's been a big spring and summer, though, for CJ. He's getting married in 2 weeks.
And more importantly, he's doing the UConn family proud, a UConn alum, along with John Wodach on the scene. And just we couldn't be prouder of him out here and coaching the Empire.
I figured you would drop that in there. Brian Jones, the head coach of the UConn men's ultimate team for the last 2 seasons, back-to-back trips to nationals. And of course, most recently, piloting the USA Beach Nationals, Beach Worlds Open team. I'll get it right. To a gold medal. Where is your gold medal right now?
It's hanging up at home next to the disc. I wasn't sure I was going to get one. They said coaches wouldn't get a gold medal, and then they had one for me. So I guess I'm a little bit of the lucky one. I would have taken the signed disc by all the team members either way.
Maybe you would have stolen Walden's medal because he was a late add to the team, something like that.
Walden just did a great job of implementing dribbling on the field for us, moving it around in the small ball. Couldn't take that gold medal away from him. He helped us earn it.
We've talked off the air and did a podcast back in France about your experience coaching that team. Check out the AUDL podcast if you have not already, as Darren Wu collects his second score of the day to even things up at 5. You know, we watched a lot of the USA and Team Canada play in Poland the past few days. And it's an interesting challenge coalescing all of that great talent into a team in such a short amount of time with limited practice. It's not like you have a long season with which to work. What was the most challenging aspect? Granted, you have a team of all-stars, but what was the most challenging aspect for you in getting everybody to buy in and into what Coach Brian Jones wanted to do?
I think there's a couple of different challenges that come when you have those experienced players, and when you're on any team is you have, especially in the team, such a high level of ultimate IQ, and there's a lot of different options to go with. There's a lot of different things that will work, and it's a question of what's the best thing we can do? How do I take in all the information and then make sure we have everybody on the same page? And it's you say it's a challenge, but it's more fun than it feels like work, because you're just working with people that know what to do.
It does sound like fun. It was fun to watch you guys compete in France. Wow, Jeff Babbitt takes a timeout. That's the final timeout of the half for the New York Empire. And certainly bizarre to take one that early in the point. Clearly Babbitt saw something he didn't like. And as a captain of the team, he's like, all right, folks, let's have a chat.
Yeah, New York is still trying to figure out what to do on offense. And over the years, anytime we've hyped up New York, it's been about them grinding out wins, their defensive play, and on offense, that's been the thing that's been holding them back. There was a great piece, and I apologize, I don't have the source of AI prediction of who would be good in the league, and it showed based on offensive and defensive statistics which team would be likely to be over 500. And when you looked at New York, it was a 99% match that New York should be over 500, but it was like a 25% chance that they would be under 500 with the offense that they've had. They haven't been able to figure it out. They haven't been able to get on the same page. And really, if you have the ability to play defense, you're going to have the ability to play it's how do you get on the same page?
It's not a lack of talent, I think is fair to say.
Now, they brought in a lot of talent, and the ownership group has worked really hard on that, and bringing in guys from Minnesota like Ben Yacht, Connor Klein, who was originally from Minnesota, and then you have Jeff Babbitt as well. And these are guys that are kind of highly sought after figures within the league.
Garvey shoots it, testing Howe, and Jackie Howe comes up with a D. Intended for Klein. The rush going the other way. Quinn looking for Tan. He's got it. Couple Toronto youngsters connect to retake the lead.
The disc wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be with how much room Tan had produced. Toronto runs a clinical fast break. A lot of times you see teams misexecute the fast break by staring down the field and looking for the one big throw that's going to do the damage. Toronto gets the turnover, and after that just uses a lot of give and goes to get things moving. And it culminates in that wide open pass.
Missed opportunity for the Empire. Out of the timeout. They're now out of timeouts for the rest of the half. That disc, I think, landed just shy of the back line. So what a pull. And Garvey begins from the back of the end zone. And nearly a Callahan. There was contact there. Keegan certainly upset with it and spikes the disc in frustration. Jeremy Norden collided with him, and that's the type of thing, if the whistle blows immediately, perhaps the altercation doesn't happen.
Well, I just think that in this instance, I can understand why Keegan's upset. He gets knocked down, and that's textbook 10 yards, especially in a situation when you're back of the end zone, and the fact that he has to ask for it, be very frustrating as a player. I'd like to see the referees, in this case, blow the whistle early on in the game.
Contact is the call on the field against the Toronto Rush.
Contact in the end zone marches Keegan 10 yards outside the end zone. That disc though floating, and Harrison knocks it away. Gord Harrison elevating for the D over Taylor Brooks. Marin floats the reset. Garvey bid for the fake. And Toronto has a 7-5 lead. Jeremy Norden scores the goal off a pretty nice toss from Jay Boychuk.
I had a little bit of a scare as I was guiding UConn through regionals. University of Toronto had come down the first day, but they were lacking some of their talent, namely Jay Boychuk, Breton Tan. And the rumor was that they were going to go, they were playing a game here in Toronto, but they were going to hitch the 9-hour drive, do the 9-hour drive through the night to arrive the next day to play UConn possibly in quarterfinals. And when your team trying to get to nationals, you don't want to hear about this influx of AUDL talent coming down through the night.
Right.
Whether or not they're going to be tired, and Toronto missed them pretty badly, and as a result, they were unable to make it out of the pre-quarter round. And so those didn't make the trip, but you never know next year. I'm looking forward to those Toronto guys coming down and giving us a battle.
And now Toronto is pulling, it appears, 20 yards outside of their own end zone, so a 20-yard violation called against New York. You know, we were last together in an AUDL setting, opening game of the season, Toronto and DC. And I think I mistakenly said earlier that Toronto, New York was on the second day of a back-to-back. No, both those teams were fresh. Toronto came to DC on the second day of a back-to-back and just got blown out by a DC team that was red hot. Great anticipation there from Huynh. This is the type of offensive disintegration we've seen from New York throughout the season, and just beautiful disc movement near the end zone. Edwards runs it down from Massac Kelly. Early in the season, Brian, we wondered what the youth movement would bring to this Toronto team. That was one of the big questions in the offseason. Guys like Breton Tan, Connor Armstrong, Jason Huynh, Jeffrey Wu. They've really been a boon to the Rush's return to first place.
I remember reading about the Ohio State women's success when they won a national championship, and I believe it was Deanna Ball, talking about how it takes a village. And when you look at this community in Toronto and larger Canada too, the amount of youth players they're able to churn out with, you compare them to the USA, Canada's the familiar foe on the international stage, whether it be in juniors or above. There's always something about a USA-Canada game. It's a testament to the people in this community that do a great job of bringing up youth, despite the fact that they have such a less population to deal with. Ultimate is thriving here in Canada, and it benefits everybody, including the Rush.
4 straight goals for Toronto. 3 breaks in a row. 4 goals in less than 3 minutes to start the quarter for the Rush. Ben Yacht out there on offense. Throughout the college season this year, Ben Yacht was primarily playing defense for the University of Minnesota Grey Duck. Minnesota falling in the quarterfinals to Carleton, which at the time I was frankly shocked by, and then Carleton backed it up with A win over UMass and a win over UNC Wilmington to take the title.
Carleton was just loaded with a lot of studs at the college level. In Minnesota, they had a lead in that game.
Yeah, they took half. Carleton with a big second half and kind of kept that momentum rolling from there.
I remember seeing you around, we were running from game to game. Those quarterfinals were incredible.
That quarterfinal round at USAU College Nationals, when you got basically 8 quarterfinals, 4 men's and 4 women's going on simultaneously. It's hard to be a spectator. It's even harder to be a broadcaster trying to cover the 8 eventual semifinalists and watch a piece of every game. But it is a fun challenge, an honor to be there. That disc to the end zone will work. Garvey picks up the assist and Klein free in the end zone again.
Some good patient offense by New York. They found a way to get into an offensive rhythm, getting the dump swings, and it results in some easy passes, and that's what you do as an offense when you're running in that vertical stack. You're switching fields from side to side because what it does, it changes the angle at which the defense has to guard, and eventually you find the advantage where the defense is out of position. After that, you strike quickly. Here, it's going to end up being an around decline for the goal.
I think it's a valuable point you just made about changing the angle of attack, because you watch the USA national team in the World Games, and they will swing the disc to an open swing without a stall count. And it's almost like, well, why don't you just hold on to it and look downfield? But by moving the disc that frequently, it puts that much more pressure on the defense, right?
It can, and there are examples, though, of offenses that operate the middle of the field as opposed to side, and so the angles might be best in that middle of the field, so you'll see teams that hold it. In the case here for Toronto, a lot of times they love it in the hands of Thompson McKnight from the middle of the field and can do a very coordinated attack.
Excuse me, Brian, New York has thrown a zone for the first time today.
New York's trying to switch up the rhythm, make Toronto slow down. And you can see that Toronto, even though that's a lot of times zones and local wind conditions will fail, it makes the other team think just for a second longer. And you'll get a lot of turnovers that look pretty easy or look like an unforced error, but it's a matter of changing the rhythm and making the other team uncomfortable.
Ben Yacht is just hanging out deep as the deep defender for New York. Finally, Harris gets a touch. It was a lot of McKnight and Armstrong going back and forth. You wonder why Chicago's Pavel Giannis leads the AUDL in completions. It's because of a possession like this against the Madison Radicals. When Madison throws its zone on Chicago over and over again, and Giannis is just the point man moving the disc around the every throw reset, it seems. And Toronto shows good patience. Lindquist picks up his first assist of the day. Ben Burrell the score, and maybe some teams would be flustered by the New York zone, but it's not anything the Rush have not seen before.
With the Rush, they do a great job, as you said, being patient, working the disc down the field. The mistake I think New York made and the adjustment they can make going on later in this game is transition out of it a little bit sooner. You got what you wanted, you slowed down the Toronto team. If you're able to play tight defense from, say, half field on, you've got a great chance of the other team being out of rhythm. They get used to moving the disc 2 yards at a time instead of 15 yards at a time, and then you can force them to make a tight decision into a tight window. On top of that, New York never really recovers throughout this possession. They stay in the zone. At the end, there's Lindquist to Burrell for the score, and you see 3 New York players kind of converge on the area, but none of them actually take Lindquist. They think, oh, okay, the other man has him.
When you're coaching, whether it's UConn or USA, and another violation here, it seems, New York, because of perhaps an unsportsmanlike penalty, is going to start with a disc in their own end zone. And I don't know for a fact it was unsportsmanlike. We haven't seen a clear signal from the officials. What else could it be? Substitution violation, maybe a time violation, not getting the team on the line. Garvey was fouled. When you're coaching UConn or USA and you're starting in a zone, do you want to make the call about when you go to man, or do you trust someone on the field to do it?
Either or.
What are you looking for?
You're empowering the defensive player who's in the deepest position to make that call. And it can be in different situations. One, it's did the other team make a really great throw that busted your zone? Or has it just been a number of throws and it's a really good position to transition to a tighter man defense? Depends on the goal, the zones, depend on the win conditions.
Acrobatic bid from Huynh, and he hurt himself holding his right elbow. And he is in some pain. McKenzie replaces Huynh. (9-6) Toronto. The DC Breeze certainly watching this game, hoping the Empire can mount a rally. Long way to go. If New York could win and knock off the Rush, then DC would be the #1 seed in the East. And Toronto knows it's hosting its next game, either against Montreal or against the winner of the Royale and the Breeze. Keegan launching. Mike Drost.
Pretty throw by Sean Keegan. And this is kind of a trust throw in and of itself. I don't think Mike Drost knows it's coming until he looks up and coming out of his cut. Keegan just reads the play. Drost coming off the in cut. This is a tough part about offense because, and this could be the future of Ultimate, you give pro Ultimate players a week long to work together every single week, develop these sorts of plays. You're going to get this type of chemistry where Keegan is able to read the play, put it out in front. It's similar to how the back shoulder throw in the NFL is so unstoppable, where when you know as a receiver it's coming, the other team can't do anything about it.
First assist for Keegan, who also has a goal. And just doesn't seem like the pulls are working out today for the New York Empire. Offsides called against New York. Toronto will start from midfield.
These are the types of things. I mean, if you're a coach, you're shaking your head right now. You just, what are you going to do? These are the types of things that make you blow a gasket. Simple stuff that are in your control.
Darren Wu back for Harris. And both the Rush and the Royale were hoping that the Philadelphia Phoenix would help them out yesterday and knock off DC. Toronto takes a timeout, but the Phoenix did not oblige, so it's a must-win game for Toronto. Timeout on the field, 4:53 remaining in this first half. 9-7 Toronto.
Mazer with the flick huck looking for Stanley Peterson in the end zone. And Stanley with the layout grab.
Air Force One.
Toronto leads New York. Welcome back to Varsity Stadium on the campus of the University of Toronto. Evan Leffler with Brian Jones. And as we mentioned, the Philadelphia Phoenix could not help out Toronto or Montreal by handing DC a loss yesterday. The Rush and Royale were ready to make it worth their while for the Phoenix. Before the game, both Montreal and Toronto had separately offered, I think the offer was 100 pounds of poutine to Philadelphia if they could beat the DC Breeze. And I guess maybe we get to eat that poutine now.
100 pounds of poutine is going to be a lot of cheese. I think it's going to play two roles. One of motivating Philadelphia and also maybe making them a little fatter for next year.
I think Jim Lloyd, the managing partner for the Toronto Rush, was also thinking about offering the Breeze 100 pounds of poutine, but insisting it get delivered 30 minutes before the game, and they had to eat it before their game. As a coach, I imagine you would probably discourage that nutritional choice.
After the game, poutine's a great victory snack.
We've been known to enjoy some poutine after a broadcast as well. Darren Wu doesn't look like he's ever had poutine in his life. He is toothpick thin, and he's got his 3rd goal of the game.
It's been kind of a cutting clinic for Darren Wu today. He's done a great job of finding the open space, whether it be faking out his defender. A lot of times we see Wu make the highlight reel play, and this is going to be something that, as you watch his development over the years, is does he start to make plays where it kind of looks almost completely ordinary? Right there, just open side goal.
Easy assist for Thompson McKnight, his first. AUDL playoffs begin next week. South Division 1st round game. Lots of buildup. Jacksonville and Dallas. The game will be at the Colony, the home of the Roughnecks in Dallas, where the Cannons are the only team that have ever won as a road visitor. Jacksonville 2-0 this year against Dallas. That game this coming Saturday night.
You and Chuck on the mic.
AUDL Game of the Week crew will be there. Chuck Kindred will join me.
Chuck, I'm jealous. We're going to have to share some poutine when we get to Montreal later on for championship weekend.
Chuck has been known to crush some poutine. You have any thoughts on that Jacksonville-Dallas matchup? Do you buy into the fact that it's hard to beat a team 3 times, or do they have the edge because they have beaten them twice and they have the confidence?
I think it's more important that they have the confidence going into this. It is hard to beat a team 3 times, hard to beat any team 3 times, just because once you win, the other team is going to have more incentive to change it up and figure out the matchup. In this case, it's throughout the records, it's going to be a great game.
Dallas will add Kurt Gibson back to the field. He had 8 assists in the Roughnecks regular season finale, which was Gibson's AUDL debut last week after a pectoral injury in the preseason, required surgery and kept him out most of the year. There's Jeff Babbitt's first goal of the game, of the second quarter, I should say, his 2nd goal of the game.
New York offense getting into a pretty good rhythm, once again employing the dump swing to change the angle, and Babbitt comes free for the end, and Taylor Brooks, and perhaps what might be his last game for the Empire, not afraid to put up the hammer. Usually Isaiah Mazzucchelli is not being run around too much in the field, but when it's Jeff Babbitt, that's a fun matchup to watch.
Do you remember the first time you saw Babbitt play, presumably with UMass?
I do. It was up close and personal, coaching UConn a couple of years ago.
How'd that go for you?
Oh, not great. Luckily for us, he for some reason was staying in the backfield and launching flick hucks, which he can do pretty well, but it was better than the alternative of seeing him just sky all of our players.
Assist number 7, Taylor Brooks. Time of goal, 9 minutes, 46 seconds.
New York and utilizing this zone once again. And we'll see if Toronto's gotten a little bit more comfortable. A couple more throws here. New York would be wise to transition. Here you have the trap. You're trying to get one risky throw out of it. And once you get one, you should try to transition here. They're still in a really good position to play defense. Toronto on that sideline. And Toronto not looking to get it off the sideline.
They're certainly taking their time, sacrificing yardage, and maybe that's the risky throw, but it was executed well to Harris.
And this is a tough place because as a defense, you have to make a call. Do you stay in it more and try to go for that block? Or do you get out of it and make sure that you don't have any big holes?
Downfield, Toronto has Wu and Burrell. Neither are moving very much. Closing in on 2 minutes to play in the first half.
2 minutes to play.
Toronto seizes the #1 seed in the East again with a win.
New York has to transition earlier than this. Once it got to Lindquist in the middle of the field, I'd say even once they get it off the sideline, you want to transition out of it. And now you see Toronto with all of these open lanes.
Wu marked by Yacht. Quick flip for Lindquist. Lindquist breaks the mark, but throws it into the ground.
A lot of times that throw is going to hang in the air. But the wind has been swirling a bit and changing directions.
New York's D-line can't do much, but then Harris drops it near our sideline camera, Ian Lunger, who has avoided close hits on the sideline several times, and that was another close call for Ian.
But Ian's one of the best in the biz, gets us great shots.
I don't know about that. One of the best in the biz?
I think the best.
Yeah, I think he's peerless. Now under a minute and a quarter, and this disc intended for Yacht. And he's all alone, and he's got the score and the break for the Empire. New York back within one, 43 seconds to go in the half.
Used to seeing this a lot from John Wodach. Going back to Nationals 2 years ago, he had an incredible stat line. I'm forgetting if it was 12 or 13 points in total. The majority of them in assists in one game at Nationals for UConn. When your target is Ben Yacht, it's so tough to guard when you're Toronto and get him in that one-on-one space where no poach is available, and you can just lay it out in the open. With all my experience in the amateur division with New York and coaching a lot of these guys, you come into these games and you can't help but root for some of them in some ways in the back of your mind, but I just look at the score at 10-9, and I wonder how we got there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like at times that New York has not played well, but then Toronto has missed their own opportunities.
Yeah, the Rush certainly have gotten sloppy in the second half of the first quarter and the second quarter.
We thought that might be in a really dire situation with Jeff Babbitt taking that timeout in the opening moments of the second quarter. And New York has kind of ironed out their issues on offense, have been able to get into a steady rhythm. And they're grinders, they're never out of any game.
Wodach getting ready to pull. Joined the Empire mid-season 2016 after leading UConn at 2016 College Nationals.
New York Empire goals for number 88, Ben Yacht. Assist number 0, John Wodach. Time of goal, 11 minutes, 17 seconds.
McKnight directing traffic, connects with Armstrong.
New York using that zone, and this is a great use of it here to waste some time. Toronto kind of knows that, and they're trying to be more aggressive with moving the disc.
That's Kelly playing offense and what could be the final point of the half. Great catch by Tan. Like all 14 bodies are on this near half of the field right now. Toronto down to 8 seconds. Armstrong, Scoobers for Lindquist. One of the most creative throwers in the world, gets it to the end zone at the buzzer. Ben Burrell, the awaiting target for the Lindquist Scoober.
New York gets Toronto to move it around, and they leave Lindquist free. After that, why not? 25-yard Scoober to the end zone, and you had 3 tall players standing around, but none of them expect this one coming.
There was a wall of white jerseys, kind of a semicircle between Lindquist and Burrell. And the Scoober is the only throw that probably would have worked, and Toronto got it in the hands of the right guy for that particular throw. 1 second remaining on the clock. Do you pull your hair out trying to stop Jeff Lindquist as an opposing coach?
Yeah, I think for many years it's one of those things where you watch the guy and he was such a deep threat for the early part.
Garvey launching long, final throw of the half, and Toronto eats it up. J.J. Edwards with a D, and the Empire will head to the locker room trailing by 2. Toronto led by as many as 3 in the first half. All things considered, both teams have to feel all right about where they stand. 11-9, Toronto leading New York at the half from Varsity Stadium in Ontario. We're at the half here in Toronto, 11-9. The Rush lead the Empire on an overcast Sunday afternoon. It is so great to have you with us, and with Brian Jones, I am Evan Lepler. Welcome you back up to the broadcast booth. An interesting first half. Toronto looked really good at times. New York looked really bad at times, and yet New York did enough to kind of wait out the storm and very much stay within striking distance.
One of the things I liked from New York at the end of the second quarter was their offense seemed to get into a pretty good rhythm. And after all of the things they've been through in the first half, to be only down 2 is a really good position for them, especially because they like to grind away on the defensive side, and you have Jeff Babbitt who will be able to go 2 ways in those tight games. For Toronto, though, there's a couple things here that you don't really like if you're the coach. One, you want to be playing your best ultimate going into the postseason. And right now, this is not Toronto's best ultimate, especially from their defensive line. And you don't want to make excuses over missing some players for World Games. And so going in the second half, it's about them playing their best. Can they do that? And then on top of that, obviously, the #1 seed is at stake.
Certainly, they get Mark Lloyd, Andrew Carroll, Jeff Powell back. That would help. New York had Chris Kotcher. It might be a different story as well. Let's take a look at where everything stands across the league. We mentioned the Dallas-Jacksonville first-round game. That's coming up next Saturday. AUDL.TV and 11 Sports with the coverage of that one from Dallas, Texas. Winner of that gets Raleigh a couple weeks later. San Francisco officially clinching the #1 seed out west. It was a great game last night between LA and San Jose. The Aviators winning at the buzzer in overtime. They'll meet again in a first-round game in the West Division for the right to battle the FlameThrowers in the West Final. Top right of your screen, Madison, 11-2, their final game of the season this afternoon against Indy. And last night, Minnesota over Pittsburgh to seize this 2 spot and home field advantage there. And bottom right, obviously, the East. Brian, as you look at this bracket, let's keep it up on the screen for another minute if we can. What stands out most to you as you kind of brace yourself for the playoffs?
I think one of the biggest themes is look at the newcomers. Look at Montreal making the playoffs for the first time in a year, where championship weekend is going to be in Montreal, and great timing to have a great season. Look at LA stepping up in this season, especially when the rumor was that San Diego was going to steal all the good players and form the super team. And in this way, Minnesota's also been surprising. And so there's a lot of parity throughout the league, a lot of new teams trying to make their mark. And then you see the juggernauts. You see Toronto. You see can Dallas rebound from their losses this year and be able to defeat Raleigh, who's now the first seed in the South Division. And on top of that, the West has just been wide open. And it wasn't until last night we understood the playoff picture. And just been a great season overall. And it's going to be hard to predict. what goes on in these playoffs.
The Seattle Cascades went all the way to the championship game of championship weekend last year. They will not be in the playoffs. The San Jose Spiders, a team that everyone kind of expected to be at the bottom of the division when the year started, they might be the biggest surprise in the league.
Yeah, they've done great, and they've done it by being so cohesive on offense and being able to strike really efficiently throughout their entirety of their games. It's kind of the reverse of the New York Empire team that finds a way to make these huge runs on defense. San Jose has a really steadying hand in Justin Norton, and that's the type of play that can give you a win in any single game. It's because if your offense can keep holding, your defense can get confidence later on, and they only need a couple breaks to win the game. That's a really powerful message for any team.
Well, the playoffs will start next weekend, the march to Montreal, leading up to the 6th AUDL Championship weekend, August 26th and 27th from Montreal in Quebec. 11-9 at the half here today. Toronto leads New York by 2. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll run down some of the best plays from Week 16 in the AUDL. Jordan Huston's 22 goals. You might see a couple of them here on AUDL.tv.
Getting on Lay. Round to Kunza, and Peterson with the interception to Jackson for the break.
Dallas putting pressure on the resets and baiting Jacksonville into throwing pucks with guys helping over the top.
Certainly a momentum booster for the Roughnecks.
You see their team charge the field afterwards. They are looking to light the fire as best they can.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate Frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a Frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
We are Eric! And we want to work with you and your school.
And just a miscue, what a dive, and grabs the disc. A beautiful play. Oh, he saves it, not in yet. unbelievable. Swings are going to really help. A nice low line flick and he run it down. What a grab.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So this piece with Eric is amazing to me. It's right in line with what we think is critical for kids, and that is to know their bodies.
The kids have really gotten into having speakers here that aren't just their teachers.
And I think the clinicians did a fantastic job. All the kids were engaged, none of them were distracted. They seemed to get into it right away.
I just want to reach out to Eric and tell him, you know, thank you for coming and sharing the message that our kids can speak up. Early recognition is critical, and I look forward to doing more things with Eric in the future.
It's been great for us as a staff and for our students to experience the message you guys have, and highly recommend it for any school that has the opportunity.
Toronto leads New York at the half. You know, in Madison today, the Indianapolis AlleyCats are trying to end their season with a win. The Radicals don't need to win to be the #1 seed, but Madison does need to win to stay perfect all time against Indy. And a few minutes ago, they finished regulation tied at 20. So they are in overtime at Bree Stevens Field. Who knows, maybe we'll see overtime today as well. In the first half, the Empire were shaky at times, but they also made plenty of plays. The highlight at the end of the first quarter was just remarkable.
They did a great job of staying in this game, and with these big athletic talents, they're going to make plays. Jake Price, kind of a new addition here late in the season, gets a tip of the disc. Ryan Dross slams it home, and after that, Harper Garvey and Sean Keegan got into a bit of a rhythm running this offense. They're able to find players open, and like we said, Wodach unleashed it at the end of the first quarter, got tipped, and Klein getting a knee in bounds Thought Klein might actually be out for this game after what looked like a possible knee injury. Toronto, though, early in this game looked great. They were converting on defense. Boychuk faking out Garvey right there. And they were moving it just really quickly off of turns, taking advantage of that space.
This connection, Huynh to Tan, a glimpse of the future and the present, really, for Toronto, as they lead by 2 at the half. There's one other East Division game going on right now, Brian, and Montreal has put 30 on Ottawa, 30-20 with just a few minutes to go, as the Royale and the Outlaws wrap up their respective regular seasons. Montreal certainly has to be in the conversation for biggest surprises in the league, with a team like San Jose and maybe a team like Minnesota. I'm not sure many people had them going 11-3. New York is a surprise from the other standpoint, but I mean, as you've gotten to watch this Montreal team, this multicultural conglomeration with players from France and Colombia and Canada and the US.
And even Switzerland.
That's
Geneva.
right.
Nasser Mbaye Vogel from Geneva, a French citizen himself and married a Swiss citizen, just had a baby.
Would you dare pick them to win at DC, or do you think we'll see a DC-Toronto final, assuming Toronto can go on and win this game? It doesn't have to play Montreal in the first round.
In the words of Chuck Kindred, do you want my fun picks? Because my fun pick is Montreal going to championship weekend, but that would just be incredible, because there was nothing like an atmosphere I've ever seen in the game as we saw in Bree Stevens Field last year with Madison. I would love to see that again with Montreal.
So if you were going to Vegas, you might put a couple bucks on Montreal just because you want it to happen. But maybe an even larger sum would go on DC to beat Montreal.
Well, speaking of the pathway from a D3 star to leading a team, Kevin Quinlan, player that came up in the upstate New York D3 ranks and is now having a huge impact, has had a huge impact for years in Montreal, but seeing the team efforts come to fruition.
New York receiving to start the second half. Toronto was down 5-4 at the end of the first and then outscored New York 7-4 in the second. Keegan throws through the contact and they'll play on. Nice catch made by Taylor Brooks. Again, Taylor moving back to Virginia after the season, so this likely his last game as Garvey launches the hammer, and an overly ambitious chance right there.
Just like we saw earlier in the game, Sean Keegan trying to hit Drost on kind of a truss space throw. Harper thinks he sees either Drost or Keegan here cutting, and one of them just doesn't expect the hammer to come up. That's the disadvantage of kind of relying on timing and chemistry plays rather than an offense that's going to rely on open side cuts and knowing where the receiver's going.
Some miscommunication there. New York will get the disc back.
New York's been at its best when they're moving the disc laterally, especially in this vertical stack offense. If they are able to keep doing that, they're going to get good angles to attack downfield.
Keegan throws right into a poach. Massac Kelly bombing it downfield, and there's Mike McKenzie into the end zone for Breton Tan.
Not a good start for the Empire. Keegan shorts the huck, and afterwards Toronto just looks like a different team. New York is slow moving and methodical, and Toronto is just ready to rip it downfield. We talked about Massac Kelly at the start of this game being that QB. But this play doesn't happen. Tan just busting downfield. He's one of those young talents that's going to be the future of this Toronto area organization.
And we had 3 turnovers on that point, Brian, and none of them required spectacular defense. They were all decision-oriented mistakes.
That's why offense is so crucial to get down. You can be a great defensive team, but if your offense can't hold consistently and put yourself in a position to hang on to leads or take advantage, your defense is going to be overstressed.
Garvey back out there, overshoots Babbitt. Jeff Babbitt catches it anyway. Been a relatively quiet game so far for Babbitt. Toronto has definitely forced him under. There's a pick downfield. New York will retreat 10 yards. And one of the things about Babbitt, he's about 6'1.5". I think after people watch him on video, they just assume he's like 6'6". And he said several times, folks have come up to him and said, I thought you were taller. Garvey launching. Out of the reach of the bidding Aletta.
You actually, it's one of those things where when you're sitting there chatting Ultimate with your boys, you get in arguments about it. People can't believe, and I say, I'm 6'2", he's smaller than I am. They're like, that's not possible. And it's just, his length is incredible.
You heard it here first. Brian claims he can sky Jeff Babbitt. Toronto looking deep, and Jeffrey Wu and J.J. Edwards should really split that goal because they were both right there. Wu takes it. And another break for the Rush to begin the second half.
Well, you know, I know I can't sky Jeff Babbitt because I haven't skied a guy that can sky a guy who can sky Jeff Babbitt. But there is one player in the AUDL I have beaten deep.
Should we announce who that is?
Yeah, I'm more than happy. A dear friend of mine, David Ferraro, playing for Montreal Royale, can tell you all about the 2006 Summer League Final in Albany, where I took him deep for the first point of the game.
You know, I've heard old, tall tales about this 2006 Albany Summer League Final, but wasn't sure if it was true.
Yeah, if you ask David Ferraro, he claims he had a bad back, but
He was just a young pup back then.
Oh, and so was I, though. We can't give him too much credit. Now he's storming the field and guarding all the best players and going deep off the turn. He might be one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in the AUDL.
Well, after that low point for him, the low point of his career in Summer League 06, he has committed to never letting something like Brian Jones get the better of him again. And it's done well for him. Wodat struggles but hauls it in. Daring shot, and that's just the type of throw that we see New York throughout the season. And to me, it says they're just not valuing possession.
They're not right there. If there was a couple other passes that led to that goal, it'd be great.
On the money to McKenzie. Good shot from Jones, and now it's Quinn to Tan. You can see the wind kind of fading away from the Empire right now. Tan just shy of the goal line. Squeezes it through. 3 straight scores for Toronto. All breaks to begin the second half.
It's the story of New York, not even just this season, but for many years, has been a very streaky team. Streaky in good and bad ways. You see their defense, they could easily, it would not shock either of us if at the end of this quarter it's 14-all. But the offense eventually puts the defense in an impossible position of having to get break after break after break. And for Toronto, it's just, they're off to the races having fun.
Well, certainly the message in the Rush locker room at the half was about energy and cleaning it up. And well, the O-line hasn't even gotten a chance for Toronto so far here in the second half because it has been all D all day. Mario Zlatic with the last goal from Breton Tan. Garvey marked by Norden. Matt Stevens had a quiet game and really a quiet year, 10 goals in 8 games. He had 61 goals for the Empire in 2014, Matt Stevens did. And there's McKenzie just eating up the upline shot. Wodach intended for Garvey.
Yeah, Stevens, he had the skill set to dominate and still does. And in that way, he's got great endurance and an ability to cut all around. But you see this offense, it's not really built for what Stevens' skill set is, which is make multiple cuts at once. New York just has been very stagnant downfield this entire game.
Ooh. Edwards not on the same page as Norden. Easy run through D for Ross Ward. This is Mike Drost.
Look how far away these New York players are. The only person available to get this disc is Mike Drost.
Wodach. So many players, if they've turned it over once, their next throw is going to be that safe swing. And oftentimes the safe swing is what you need to lead to a goal. Keegan picks up the assist. Klein with another score. New York's first goal of the second half comes after more than half the quarter has elapsed.
You can see New York playing at their best when they are looking for that swing and the dump early on in the count. When they're staring downfield trying to gain huge chunks of yardage. You want to gain huge chunks of yardage. You want your offense to be able to score in fourth throws, and you see that out of teams like San Francisco who can score just, they can put it to the end zone, and they have these powerful side stacks. At the same time, the expectation can't be that you're going to score in fourth throws. And so for New York, a simple adjustment would be just move the disc faster. Just get more people cutting. They're too much to the other side of let's wait, let's take our time. Some offenses just move the disc too fast and don't take advantage of the space in front of them, but that's not the case for New York today.
14-10 Toronto. First O point of the second half for the Rush. Midway here in the third quarter.
Remember when we see the NFL players, when there be a long offensive drive, you see the defenders get on the bike, staying warm. I wonder if Toronto's got that on the sideline for them.
Certainly something you want is, it's been half an hour since they last had a point, and McKnight's throw defended by Yacht. Ben Yacht plus 14 yesterday in Ottawa. He had 6 goals and 5 Ds. Can New York capitalize? Babbitt lays it off. Jake Price to the end zone near the sideline. Inbounds. Mike Drost. Make it Ryan Drost with a score.
Well, it's Ryan Drost that gets the goal, but really, they were in a dangerous situation with Clark Kofor with a disc, and I think he got to a high stall count, and instead of looking for the open man, he just looked for Jeff Babbitt because he loaded up that scuba, and it worked out.
Stall 5, look for the swing. Stall 6, look for Babbitt.
Not a bad reset option.
Check out this catch near the sideline. Price did not make it easy for Ryan Drost.
Ooh.
Very close.
What do you think?
Hard to tell through the traffic. It was a break for New York.
And a really quick one at that. You see the same line out there once again.
Toronto's O-line didn't complete a pass on the last point. The Toronto O-line did not complete a pass in the third quarter until about 5:20 to go in the third. Think about that. It's usually a good thing. It means the D-line has been taking care of business for you. This is Burrell with Price on the mark. He'll reset for Adrian Yearwood.
Toronto doesn't look downfield that long. They get a lot of guys engaged in the reset action. After about stall 2, if there's not something available, you see multiple cutters trying to fill the space.
McKnight's mark fell down, allowed him to get the swing to Burrell, and the ensuing high release lefty shot for Harris. That's more like it from the Toronto offense.
They got into a good rhythm, able to move the discs from side to side, and the marks from New York were very, very aggressive, trying to switch a lot. It can be really important sometimes to have aggressive marks when a team's shooting downfield and they're being really aggressive with deep shots, but that's not been the case here with Toronto. You want your marks and your downfield defenders to be on the same page. What causes chaos when you're playing man defense is when your marks are overly aggressive and the mark is taking away the same part of the field that the downfield defender's taking away. When they're taking away the same space, that's just game over. Offense is going to win every single time. And so when you get aggressive marks that kind of change the angle of attack too frequently, downfield defenders don't know where to play, they lack confidence, they start chasing receivers. And when you're just chasing Cam Harris around and not dictating the position he's going to take, that's pretty much game over.
New York back on offense now. Wodach with the first cut. Marked by Tan, he wraps the flick to Drost. Mike Drost back to Garvey. Another turnover, this time from Taylor Brooks.
Drost had a few steps, but Brooks kind of put that out to the side instead of out in front.
Marin initiates after the turn. Slotich. Great job by Brooks getting the disc back. Kelly stopped near the sideline, and Brooks gets the D. Big bid from Marin, but Keegan with a clean catch. Closing in on 3 minutes to go in this third quarter, and yikes.
Nobody cutting for New York. This is the part that you can tell that this talent, every single one of these players has proven themselves at some point in time of being capable of playing at this level. And nobody's cutting and nobody's on the same page, and we get turnovers like that, ghost turnovers, where what was he looking for?
Looking for it all this time, and Brooks gets his second D of the point. So Taylor Brooks racking up the stats. He's even for the point, 2 Ds and 2 throwaways. And now he's -1 again.
Wodach tries to take the cut back towards the middle of the field, and Taylor thinks he's open to the wide side, throws it wide. Once again, these are the types of errors you expect in the first game of the season.
Not in game 14. And frankly, they're the errors that New York made in the first game of the season down the stretch when Toronto ran away from them in the fourth quarter. A game that was tied early in the fourth, 17-all. Another break for Toronto. Brooks only with 2 Ds on the point. He had 3 throwaways, and the Rush capitalized to make it 16-11. It's their largest lead of the game.
Toronto's doing a good job of getting where they need to be going into the playoffs. I would still think that they would need to play better than this to beat DC.
I think that's fair. I think not only are they without the 3 guys who are in Poland right now, they're also missing Jonathan Martin today. Ian McKenzie is a defender who's had a really fine season. You know, one guy the Rush will not get back for the playoffs is Steve Armitage, who chose to retire after the San Francisco game. He lives a couple hours outside of Toronto and just bought a new house. You know, as we all know, priorities change in Ultimate, and one of the great goal scorers in the history of the AUDL. certainly getting up there in age, in his mid-late 30s. He'll be 35 in September, so not late 30s, mid-30s.
But he joined the league when he was not a young man anymore.
That's right. This one, Mike Drost had the fingertips on it, but could not make the catch. And certainly not an easy play there for Drost. Watching USA Columbia earlier today, it struck me the number of great layout grabs that the USA team made. Just making them look routine. Chris Kocher had one. Georgia Boscher had one. Sarah Griffith had one. It's amazing how the best of the best players make the great highlight look easy, and it's almost like they planned. Like, it would be too easy to give Chris Kocher a clap catch in the end zone, so let's give him a chance to have a highlight that could make SportsCenter, and maybe it will.
You're seeing almost the future of the game as New York throws it away once again. When you have players that can go and dive for those passes, you don't want the defense to have a chance to get a block. How many times have we seen the disc come up short today? You want the disc to go long, make sure it's out of range, and that the only person that can catch it is that receiver. And we see that in other sports a lot, football especially, where it's about taking that shot.
Final seconds of the quarter. And that disc out of the reach of the intended target. And that is how the third quarter will end.
Well, after first couple quarters of New York going down and then bringing it back, this one facing a 5-goal deficit going into the fourth quarter.
16-11, Toronto leads New York. 12 minutes left in the regular season for both these teams. The Rush trying to clinch the top spot in the East.
Hi, I'm Jolis Larakis, and I'm the operations manager of Boone Technical Clothing here in the United States. I lost my mom last 2014 to breast cancer. She was 54 years old. It was pretty tough for me because I wasn't able to help her or have the kind of knowledge to be able to do something about the situation. I learned about Eric, about Jim's vision, about his organization, and I want to be part of it. Not only as an ultimate player, but also a son to my mom. I think one thing that early recognition is critical helped me was to be able to reach out to other people who are still having the chance or privilege to do something about the cancer within their family or like friends. I think that's what Eric is all about. It's just not within the sport. It goes on and off the field. If you volunteer, even though it's only you can be able to inspire and aspire other people to help the movement. And you never know. People are just waiting to be reached out to, and they're only waiting for you.
Nice crowd on hand despite the overcast conditions and the threat of rain on this Sunday afternoon in Ontario. Evan Lepler, Brian Jones, our entire Fulcrum Media-led crew. 16-11 the Rush in front. Fourth quarter begins in less than 30 seconds, and Brian Jones, the Empire, have 12 more minutes to try to make a statement here. What do you hope to see from them?
I think it's just about passion. And in some ways, it's been tough going through that quarter. You get broken a lot. It's easy to just let it go. It's the end of your season. You're not making the playoffs, and it's time for them to play with a little bit of pride and passion. That's something they've done over these years too, and in this season. The defense has made the runs to keep them into this. You know, it was, even when they were down halfway through the season, we thought there was a really good chance, and New York had a lot of confidence that they could make the playoffs.
Well, stay tuned. Coming up here in the fourth quarter, we will unveil the playoff schedule for you. Beginning next weekend, we've already mentioned Jacksonville and Dallas next Saturday night, right here on the 11 Sports Network and AUDL.TV. Adrian Yearwood on the under. Yearwood seems like a forgotten guy sometimes with this Toronto team. The illustriousness of his career is pretty sparkling, and yet we haven't spent a ton of time talking about him. And there's great defense. It was Darren Wu who got a piece of it, intended for Babbitt, hit Jeff in the hands, but Wu will get the D.
It's when the AUDL starts, there's probably a lot of people who started watching the AUDL and started watching Ultimate then, and it was right around that time that Yearwood was in his prime, and he's still a great player, but he was guarding Bo for Team Canada throughout the World semifinal game back in 2012 in Japan. And you don't think of Yearwood as this athletic freak, but he was. He was that guy that was getting incredible blocks. Kofor nearly had a free one in his hand.
McKnight thought about the deep shot, waits for the under, and the disc died on him.
Yeah, and we talked about when we would play Ultimate, and when I first started college on the pavement in the parking lot at midnight, we talked about Canadian rules with the one bounce. I'm not sure that applies here anymore. Giving it right back to Toronto. Playing a game of hot potato where nobody wants the disc.
The throw released on the whistle. Babbitt intercepts, but this one is coming back. By the way, in double overtime, Madison 22, Indianapolis 21. Radicals finished the season 12-2, their 5th straight year with at least 12 wins.
Keegan's getting ready. He's down the sideline with an umbrella ready for the rain.
Well, with the timeout on the field, let's take you through the postseason bracket and assign some dates to these games. The times are still up in the air, but the dates are pretty firm. This is assuming a Toronto victory here over New York. So we're jumping the gun a little bit. Maybe the Empire will make us look silly. We mentioned Dallas and Jacksonville next weekend. That will be the only AUDL game next weekend. So Jacksonville and Dallas will have the spotlight to themselves. We will have the call for you from the Colony in Texas. The following weekend, there is one AUDL game. It'll be Pittsburgh at Minnesota on Friday night, August 4th in the Twin Cities. So each of the next 2 weekends, there will be just the 2 first-round games. And then the following weekend, August 11th, 12th, and 13th, is when the action will really ramp up. Because on Friday night, August 11th, again, if this result holds, Montreal will play at DC. On Saturday, August 12th, LA will play San Jose in the Bay Area. West Division final will be that Sunday, so the West Division, like they did last year, playing in one stadium in the Bay Area Saturday and Sunday. The Midwest final will be on that Saturday night, August the 12th, in Madison, where the Radicals will host the winner and survivor of Minnesota and Pittsburgh out of the timeout. Tan makes quick work, and just to finish the South Division final, obviously with great anticipation, is Saturday, August 12th in Raleigh, where the Flyers will take on the survivor of Dallas and Jacksonville. You got all that, right?
Perfectly. Ready to go.
Basically, that weekend of August 11th, 12th, 13th is going to be nuts. There will be 6 AUDL elimination games in that weekend. And
you're calling every one of them, right?
That would be cool. Sounds unrealistic.
We don't have the private jet yet.
If anyone out there would like to make the offer,
come on, Jim Garancher.
Someone has some connections. That would be one heck of a weekend.
You and Chuck sipping martinis. I know Chuck's in.
The lead has swelled to 6. And New York gives it away once again. It has been a fairly methodical effort from Toronto today. Haven't been spectacular. Frankly, they haven't needed to be. Keegan launching. Drost adjusting. Incomplete. And there was interference called against Toronto.
Pass interference is the call on the field against the Rush.
And the call will stand.
I thought that might have been far enough over Drost that he couldn't have made a play on it, but Empire will keep the disc.
Taylor to Drost for New York.
New York able to work it around. Wouldn't say within striking distance, but something wouldn't surprise me with the way this game is going, and if all of a sudden we saw Jeff Babbitt try to, maybe Jeff Babbitt's getting word that he's down. They're in double over, that game's over, right?
I have not seen the stats yet from Indianapolis. There's a wild sudden death point between Indy and Madison. AlleyCats tied it at the end of the first overtime with 2.5 seconds left. Madison began the overtime with the disc. Colin Camp had a throwaway. Indy got the disc 8 yards from the end zone, called a timeout. Travis Carpenter with possession, threw it into the ground, gave it right back. And then Brian Hart sent a deep shot to Kevin Pettit-Scantling. Rick Gross had the D. Indy got it back. And then Jeff Mascalunas, a former Wisconsin Hodag who joined the Radicals late in the year, got a shoulder-high block, leading to Madison easily punching in the game winner to win it by 1 in double OT. Harris with another assist. Aaron Wu with another goal. Cam Harris entered this year just as the second player in AUDL history with at least 150 goals and 150 assists. Harris and Indy's Keenan Plew easily over plus 200 for his career, Cam Harris. Over 40 assists and 30 goals again in 2017. It's time to start thinking about not just the AUDL MVP, but first and second team all AUDL. And I think this year is the toughest year we've ever had to make those determinations. Oh, goodness. Mario Zlotich inches away from a Callahan. And he'll pick up the assist to J.J. Edwards. The Rush on a second half rampage. In control here in Toronto. Looks like a travel.
Everything's been going wrong in the second half here for the New York Empire. Within 2 to start the second half, and the offense just hasn't gotten in a rhythm, and it's so tough to say. It's just, we've talked about it at length with the talent that they have. Certainly a disappointing year. If you're Toronto, this is the second half you wanted to have.
Yep. It was 11-9 at the half, 8-3 so far since halftime. Toronto began the second half with a string of 3 breaks in a row to set the tone.
2 seconds. Edwards from Slash at 5:02.
Foul called, and Garvey will march off the 10. You know, the East Division was primed for a shakeup coming into this last weekend of the season, because if DC had lost at Philly, then Montreal would have had a chance to move into second place. How about that? Off the ricochet, and then New York can't put it away.
Nice team, number 43, Harrison.
It has been a long, frustrating grind for the Empire, closing the season with 5 games on the road. You know, they knew coming into the season they needed to get off to a good start because of the road schedule ahead, and they just couldn't do it. And they never really were able to find a rhythm.
They were used to being able to beat up on some of the teams in the lower part of the division, including Montreal, which they really didn't lose to, and Philadelphia and Ottawa, and thought they had those wins in hand. And even though they lost to DC and Toronto, that was par for the course for an Empire season.
Sure.
This year the difference was dropping those couple games to Montreal.
They lost twice to Montreal. The 6 wins, 3 of them came against Ottawa. 1 against Montreal and a couple against Philly, but also the loss to Philly was costly. And just, you know, you look at New York's games against DC these past couple of years. It's not like DC's ever blowing them out. They're all going right down to the wire. So many 1-point losses. But DC has owned New York in the 4th quarter and overtime. Jackie Howe shooting it. Mike Drost with another D. CJ Ouellette trying to call a timeout. And the Empire will get some fresh bodies out there on the field. Jackie Howe's throw to the end zone, knocked away, and we'll take the timeout as well. 19-12 Toronto here in the 4th quarter, 3:57 to go.
Peterson getting on Lay. Round to Kutza, and Peterson with the interception to Jackson for the break.
Dallas putting pressure on the resets and baiting Jacksonville into throwing pucks with guys helping over the top.
Certainly a momentum booster for the Roughnecks.
You see their team charge the field afterwards. They are looking to light the fire as best they can.
Well, if the score stands, it'll be Montreal at DC on Friday, August 11th, and then 2 days later, on Sunday, August 13th, the winner of that game will travel up to Toronto and play the Rush. Toronto looks like they're going to be the #1 seed, Brian Jones, but DC has won 2 of the 3 meetings this year with Toronto. Of course, DC had the good fortune of hosting the Rush twice. Home teams going 3-0 in that season series. What are the keys in your mind for the Breeze coming to Toronto and dethroning the reigning perennial East Division champs?
Well, I think we saw earlier in the season when DC just plays great isolation offense. They do a great job of looking at one cut and then moving on to the next option, progressing through that. And I think if they're able to do that, they're going to have a really good shot after that. The thing about Toronto that's a little bit disadvantage for them is they have this great chemistry and this great offense, but they've been doing it for so many years that teams know what they like to do. And DC is going to be that team that's going to have a game plan ready. It's a matter of, can they play well?
Head coach Darryl Stanley in his first year on the job in DC. Alex Guesquier, the USA World Games coach, a technical director of sorts, and certainly a foul. Surprised the refs didn't see it. Ryan Drost, a man of integrity.
Yeah, Ryan had an option to make a great play, but had to do it through the body.
Traveling violation. They'll retreat the 10 yards. Marin looking for Huynh. Got him. Toronto's pulling away late in the 4th.
Marin is one of those guys I don't think you wouldn't be the first player you talk about on Toronto, but his pulls make a difference, and when you get the turnover, he's a lefty, he has that ability to put discs into spaces that not many other people have. So if you're Ryan Drost, you see Huynh going deep. In this position, you're expecting that throw to never go up, but Marin does a great job of placing it perfectly.
Marin, one of the members of the crew that Toronto calls the Jaywalkers. Jarrett Marin, Jay Boychuk, Jason Huynh, and I think Ian McKenzie is also a member of the Jaywalkers, and they say that there's a silent J in there because everyone else's name starts with a J and Ian doesn't necessarily fit, but that crew of young guys.
Well, I mean, I don't think that most people know that there are actually 3 Drosts on the Empire, and the 3rd Drost is, of course, Matt Lamar.
Right. Matt Lamar, who has played every single game in the history of the Empire franchise. Out there again today, number 12, playing mostly defense for New York. Brooks looking for another assist, and he will get it. Wodach landing in the end zone. Well, if that's the final assist of Taylor Brooks' Empire career, mark it down. Brooks, the Radford University product. Started his ultimate career as a college freshman, originally from Lynchburg, Virginia. He led the team in assists 2 years ago, and he's played every single game this season. Two and a quarter minutes remaining in the regular season here in Toronto. Again, our AUDL postseason coverage begins next Saturday from Dallas, the Cannons and the Roughnecks.
New York Empire goal scorer number 0, John Wildfire. Assist number 7, Taylor Brooks. Time of the goal, 9 minutes, 45 seconds. Wildfire from Brooks at 9:45.
Look for a full playoff preview this week on the AUDL.com and the Tuesday toss.
2 minutes remaining in the 4th quarter, 2 minutes.
Yearwood can't get there. It's a big win for Minnesota last night at home against Pittsburgh. That shot ripped to Yad, who's had a much quieter game today than he did yesterday. Babbitt scores the goal. Ben Yacht's former team, Minnesota Wind Chill, 11-3. Josh Klain, franchise record for assists in a season. And they get to host Pittsburgh in a playoff game for the right to play Madison, a team, remember, they beat this year back in April in the Midwest Final.
Josh Klain is so much fun to watch. I like to joke with him, call him David Beckham for bending it like Beckham, because he has just a way with putting great bank and great angle on his throws. Kind of the way that Beckham used to take those penalty kicks. So dangerous from any spot on the field.
Yeah, Klain is an old school gunslinger. It was a break for New York. They've scored 2 in a row to get back within 6. And the Empire just dropped the pull. Basically equivalent of an onside pull. Toronto gets there quickly, gets the reset. Basically, the Rush have 17 seconds to notice that New York drops the pull and get down there. Sensing that time is an issue. Saw that strategy employed in the playoffs last year, championship weekend. The Rush used it. The Madison Radicals wanted to do it 2 years ago in the AUDL finals against San Jose. And they were planning on doing it but didn't communicate it properly. And, well, New York comes up with a D here.
It's almost like the equivalent of a fouling at the end of a basketball game, trying to get those short possessions to preserve time.
Oh, great catch. Clark Kofer keeps possession alive. Kofer lets it rip. Yacht on his horse. The story of New York season, just a little bit off.
I think one guy that we haven't really mentioned today that's going to be a difference maker in the playoffs is Jeremy Norton. He can be a gunslinger in his own right, and he's been utilized as the other quarterback on the defensive line. We'll see. He's got some big game experience, especially for Team Canada.
The whistle blows for a triple team. You don't see the call too often. But when 3 defenders are on the mark, that's too many. I'm with you, though. Jeremy Norton, important pickup for this Toronto squad. Remember the Canadian mixed beach team that took silver in France? Seems like every single year the Rush do it. Once again in 2017, Toronto, regular season champs in the East Division. 20-14 over New York. Toronto improves to 15-0 all time against the Empire.
Well, that puts the end of the regular season. So much disappointment for the Empire. Seasons of could-haves, would-haves. Maybe if that first game of the season had gone just a little bit differently. Toronto, though, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
How dangerous is this Toronto team, not just in the East, but looking towards championship weekend in Montreal? They've won 10 of their last 11 games heading into the playoffs.
Anybody can upset anybody, but I think if you're Toronto, this year, it just hasn't felt like other years in the past when you've been really gunning, and that could be a good or a bad thing. It could mean you're below the radar. I gotta think that I'm looking at Raleigh. I really like what Raleigh's done in that whoever comes out of that Western or out of the South playoffs is going to be very tested, and that's a great thing. You want to have great opponents coming at you. The Rush sometimes have snoozed through the regular season.
You see Toronto now 11-3. That has been updated. Montreal wrapping up their win against Ottawa. They'll be 9-5, and Madison, after their double OT win, will be 12-2. San Francisco, depending on how they fare in Vancouver this afternoon, will be either 10-4 or 9-5. But this is the dozen, the group of 12. One of these teams will be a champion on August 27th. 4 of them will qualify for championship weekend in Montreal over the next few weeks. It should be one heck of a postseason journey ahead of us. And it begins next weekend, Dallas and Jacksonville next Saturday night. The following Friday, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and then the other 6 playoff games, the 2 first-round games in the West and the East, and the 4 title games all on the weekend of August 11th, 12th, and 13th. Wow, what a regular season it has been. Certainly the most compelling we've ever seen in the AUDL in terms of the number of shocking upsets. And you think back to what the Philadelphia Phoenix have done building their program. Jacksonville going from 5 wins last year to 10 wins this year. And of course the San Jose Spiders returning to the playoffs for the first time since 2015. Final score of this game, 20-14. Brian, the Rush had Jeff Lindquist Scoobers and some sloppiness throughout the day, but Toronto got the job done.
They did a great job at converting on the turn, moving it just fast, led to a lot of easy goals, and that was the difference. The Empire offense unable to be consistent. The defense kept them in striking distance within the first half, but after that, it was all Toronto making play after play, and maybe even just New York being a little bit careless with the disc. Toronto gets the second half they wanted going into the playoffs. They're playing well.
The fans here at Varsity Stadium, loyal, dedicated, and they have a lot to celebrate. Toronto on its way to the postseason, winners of 10 of 11. For Brian Jones and our entire crew, Evan Lepler saying so long from Toronto. We'll see you next Saturday in Dallas as the AUDL playoffs begin.